Hi, my name's Erwin, and this is the Poetry Lighthouse podcast. In today's episode, I had the pleasure to interview poet Nilam Patel, who will talk about her debut poetry collection, Finding Her, Being Her. And now for the second poem, we will discuss a bit, it's a bit shorter, but there are so many things going on. So would you like to read it?
Sure. So this next poem is it's a poem that I created um, from my college days. I feel like when I was a young woman, um, still experiencing some of these types of thoughts and about feminism or about patriarchy, feel like I felt like I had to be strong and I had to be on guard all the time. And I feel that now that I'm older, I realize the beauty of a woman and the softness of a woman that really just makes her who she is. So, okay, so here we go. Despite the strong and brave shades we often feel we need to paint of a woman, it is rather her humble and soft hues that make her glow, even when they try to burn her down.
I really absolutely admired the imagery of this painting. Um, it's as though I could almost feel the softness of the hues and the painting as it's being done on the canvas. And I think this dichotomy between the strong and soft is very important because it's kind of acknowledging that whereas our society right now is trying to portray women as you must be always strong, you must be always very tough, do not let yourself seen as weak because you must be as strong as man, and etc., etc. And maybe there's also something really nice and powerful about the softness and fragility of life. And I think that's also something very important that we should not take up away from the female character. It's a very special thing about her, and I think it can be both. It doesn't have to be whether, as in your poem, it is not one thing or the other, but you can see that we make some emphasis in the softness, but the strong character is still there. So we have these both shifts, but I like the way you like to acknowledge these soft hues as if you were painting this new vision on the canvas, and I love that. Could you tell us a bit more about this dichotomy?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel that, like you said, women have this need to be, stronger than maybe they originally felt. Like my mom's generation, my grandmother's generation, women were very, very submissive, where they felt like they needed to, be that warm voice in the house, and they were the compassionate ones, and they were the ones that were always having to be empathetic. They never thought about themselves. They thought about more, the family or just the other people in their villages. Um, and so in order to be strong, to voice your own opinion, to be able to say what you are thinking, even though it may contradict what the society is telling you, um, I think that it's important to have both. I think the idea of a mother to a child will never change. The way the child looks at a mother, it's because mothers are warm, they're compassionate, they are so loving, and children see that. And that's not something that we should stray away from. That's something that's so important about being a woman. But at the same time, now we also understand that we can be brave, that we can have that voice and have desires and ask for things that we also want, that help us contribute to our softness, that help us contribute to our femininity. And
Yeah, and I would even go as far as saying that these softness can be seen as powerful because we're often, we're always encouraged to be courageous and to never cry, to be upset or sad or desperate. But actually, these aspects can be a human strength in which we can find compassion, which is a human need, and all these emotions that all of us often contain, and which also applies to men, which is why it is essential to understand that this softness and vulnerability, it applies for all human beings, and it's perfectly normal for men to feel as well, which makes you think, indeed, man doesn't need to be this tough, serious, expressionless macho, which we now call toxic masculinity. But we can also try and be soft. And it is necessary for all of us to explore this wide range of emotions. So I think this poem is marvelous, actually, and it speaks volumes. So now going to the next poem.
that perspective. I'm sorry, I just want to comment on what you said because, I've had men tell me that, well, men, in certain cultures, they don't have the opportunity to, be soft or have those emotions. And, I do understand that because it's a big culture shift, for a man to be sensitive or for him to display his emotions. Even, poets that are men. I mean, you really find that they are far and few for this type of a topic. I mean, most men that I have seen, they write about different types of topics. A lot of them write about women or relationships and things, of that nature. And the ones that are writing about their feelings and in a deep way, I find it so intriguing. I would love to hear the male perspective of all things. For a male poet to write about the secrets of a man. I would love to read that, and I'm sure there are so many women out there that would love to as well. So just a thought.
Something to look forward to. Yeah, absolutely. Um, I'm pretty sure there's a lot of poets out there experiencing this sort of feelings as well. Might be interesting to look up some of them, actually. So now, before you read the third poem, would you be able to give us a bit of background on this piece and how this piece came to fruition?
Mhm. So this piece has a lot to do with not just women, but anyone that is feeling like they're lacking in something. They feel inspired by others, or they feel maybe a bit of jealousy or envy when they see someone doing something that's amazing. Um, and I find that we as humans, it's completely natural to feel that way. But what I would like to encourage people to do is to take that feeling and aim to then be that person that can inspire. Not saying that you have to be the person that inspired you, but take those skills, create something beautiful, be something beautiful, and then be that person that someone else is looking up to. That's what I think we should, be striving for, in all aspects of adulthood and childhood. I mean, be a role model, but also, enjoy what others are producing. Um, and in seeing what other people are doing, looking at yourself in the mirror or a reflection, like I mentioned in this poem, and just realizing that you yourself actually have all the potential you will ever need. What you probably may be looking for is rather an inspiration or a trigger or just something to snap you out of feeling like an imposter or feeling like, I wish I could be doing that.
That's great. Could you delight our ears with your wonderful poem?
She had a whole vibe when she walked in. I wanted to know her. I wanted to be her. I had so many questions, and in the end, it was my reflection in her eyes that gave me all my answers.
I love that reading, and especially the line breaks. They are very well thought. I think they give the poem a specific pace and time for us to process what we are reading, and which connects us to the ending, which is the answer to resolve this ambiguity at the beginning of the poem. Because when we first read this poem, we may wonder, well, who is this other woman? And why does she not talk? Or is the narrator talking to herself? It seems like this ending works as a sort of epiphany when she realized that she's projecting herself in a different way and she's able to, you know, see everything more clearly. And also, it becomes a brand new person. Um, as we all do, we become different people and we are constantly changing throughout our lives. And it is in these specific moments, like in this poem, when we make these radical metamorphoses, we realize something about ourselves and about the world, and all these doubts suddenly disappear. And there is this feeling of satisfaction at the end of finally be able to see yourself and recognize yourself for who you are, which is a nice and warm feeling. So could you tell us a bit more about this ending and how did you connect it to your poem?
Yes, so I definitely feel like those last two lines, it brings a sense of peace. It brings a sense of I don't have to look elsewhere anymore. I don't have to go find someone to save me or someone to help me be who I want to be, um, or to tell me who that person should be. You know, a lot of times we're looking endlessly for someone to be in a relationship with, for someone to be a friend with, to our mothers, to our fathers, to really just give us some type of love or some type of reaction to something in a way that we want them to. And rather, I think the most important thing is to look inward first, to be completely at peace with what you're doing in your life and the things that you have accomplished. And if you are not, then you yourself are the ones that can inspire, can bring joy, can really motivate, can have that moment of epiphany, as you mentioned. And no one else can do that better than yourself. And once we can be in that solitude and really just enjoy it, I think it's at that point that we can actually be around and choose the people we want to surround ourselves with that bring us and help serve that purpose. Getting rid of any toxicities and getting rid of people that maybe are bringing us down. I think once we feel at peace with ourselves, we can be confident enough to do that. And in turn, achieve those dreams or just create those dreams in the first place. I think a lot of people have struggles with creating new aspirations and new hobbies or new desires as they get older. They are completely wrapped up in their day-to-day lives and they feel like a hobby or something that is only for themselves is unattainable. And I always try to fight that thought because just as we care about, our families, our friends, everyone around us, our jobs, um, you know, let's equally care about our own needs and our own desires, because, you know, we can only serve others if we serve ourselves first. We can only understand others once we understand ourselves first. So, those thoughts, I think we instill in our children often, then we forget them as we grow older, as we have our own children to take care of or our own responsibilities to take care of. We tend to forget about our own dreams or, like I said, creating new ones.
Right, and I think this poetry collection is just the living proof to fight this idea of there's an age to everything, and once you reach this point, it becomes impossible to achieve certain things, which is also connected to the imposter syndrome, right? And that sometimes the answer is just as simple as looking at ourselves in the mirror without a judgment and finding what's important for us and what's important in our lives and who do I want to become, because when we don't recognize ourselves in the mirror, which is the case in this poem, we have to step back and say, well, hold on, how did I lose myself? And how can I find myself again? Which is literally the title of this collection, finding her, being her. And, well, all these poems in this collection indeed are so wonderful, and that's so inspiring, because this is not only about self-improvement, but also about finding your voice and feeling empowered, especially for women, and it widens our perspectives about different cultures and our way of living in this hectic world. So in order to, try and keep us grounded somehow. And I also really liked the art sketches that you have drawn on some of your poems, which make it all the more appealing to the eye. For example, on the second poem we discussed, you drew a woman in flames, and in the last one there's an eye, if I remember well. So how do you come up with these ideas and images, and what do they represent in terms of how are they linked to your poems?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, they come out of emotion. All of my drawings, as I mentioned earlier, they're very raw. I create them in that moment. And as you're leafing through my book, you'll see that not every poem has an image. I really only felt that I was complementing these poems with art, and it wasn't, the main focus of the book, but I felt like some of the poems it added to. Rather others, if I were to force myself to sketch something, it would actually be taking away from the poem. And so that's kind of how I picked which ones needed it or were complementing it or could help really send that message. And so that's why I really felt like keeping those images as raw as possible. They're unedited, I didn't never went back and redid anything. And I felt like some of the images are very detailed and some of them are just very like, journal, like I scribbled it and that was it. And it just was perfect to me. It was, unintentional the way that it started. But I wanted to keep it as raw as possible so that it created that, you know, personal experience for myself, but also for the readers. And so that's why you'll see that. I think the art is very versatile. Some of them took me days to produce, and some of them, like I said, it was literally in a matter of seconds I did it, and I was just thinking like, that's it.
Mhm.
So
Sorry, I think specifically the fact that they are, you know, is raw, I think that's really important and also very beautiful because it's sort of like fighting this imposter syndrome of I have to make this look perfect. It has to be the perfect eye, it has to be the perfect flames, and it has to be the perfect picture. This kind of provides us a glimpse of that specific moment when you were feeling it. Because I guess when you were drawing these sketches, you were feeling that, what you were talking in that poem, and that's what came out. In fact, I think even in on the cover of this poetry collection, you've got also another sketch. Could you show it to us?
Yes. So this is something that, again, I created one day, and I had no idea that I was going to put that on my cover. But once I saw it, I just felt, that represents the book so well. Um, I created this cover myself. I at one point thought I would hire someone to do it, and now looking back on the entire journey, I'm so happy that I did it because this cover, it just means so much to me. And, it just represents the entire feeling of the book so well. And I wouldn't change anything about it.
It's very beautiful and appealing. There seems to be a lot of emotions in that drawing. There is this feeling of loneliness. You have this woman sort of crouching down on the ground in a despondent way. So I'm glad you opted to keep the drawing in your own way. I think that's beautiful. And I wonder, did you take any drawing classes before?
Honestly, not really. I mean, I did do art when I was in like elementary school, the just normal art classes. But one thing I've realized is if you are an artist, then you are born with those skills. You just need maybe someone to bring that to light. But then art is an exploration. I think the beautiful thing about art and poetry is there are no rules, right? So you can create whatever you want, however you want. And if it's beautiful to you, then that's all that matters. And I try to remember that as I'm creating art because it brings that confidence. Um, because the same thing applies to poetry. Like if you overwork it, then you are now taking away that emotion. You are now deleting things that were so important for the poem to begin with. Or if you're trying to follow certain rules that you learn maybe in literature class, yes, I understand that, and very well those things matter. But to overwork it, I think, is important to make sure you keep in your back of your mind as you're doing any type of art form, whether it's music or theater or drawing. Um, and so I think once I learned those basic skills, my art teachers must have told me to just explore because that's what I've done my entire art journey. I'm a painter, I'm a sketch artist. I do very different types of mediums. I love abstract. I think that's my favorite type of art just because I can just get in the moment and create something just in my mind, and I don't have to go over and over and over trying to perfect it, and it's meant to be that way. So a lot of the times what I create, I call it abstract because that's just to me the safest form. Um, Maybe to someone else it might be something else, but to me all my work is abstract because it doesn't follow any rules, and I find that brings me to create whatever I want and to not overthink and feel like, oh, well, this is not going to be something someone else likes. It's really meant to provoke thought. I think abstract art is, and I really do more than anything else. I feel like this book I wrote to provoke deep thought. I want the readers to read it and be thinking about it throughout their day, their lives. And I think a lot of us don't have time, to have deep thoughts in our day. So if this creates that movement of having deep thoughts again in our lives, that would be a dream.
I couldn't agree more. You phrased that very well. it is tremendously important for us to carve out at least a bit of time during our days to think and reflect about our lives and, the world around us, which is ever so absent in our busy routines nowadays. And I think poetry, as well as other types of arts, of course, can help us come back to this mental space. Because I think everyone has an artistic outlet to process one's thoughts, and it is quite a journey. And I hope that people who read your poetry collection can, sit with these thoughts and let them stew for a long period of time. Because these are important questions we need to ask ourselves every now and then to make sure we are enjoying our lives. So thank you so much, that was so beautiful, and the explanation of your poems was so detailed. I like that, thank you very much. Now before we go, I would like you to tell our audience, where can we find your poetry collection, Finding Her, Being Her? Is there an online website that we can go to?
So you can definitely find all the links on my website, findingherbeingher.com. It is available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, and it is available as an ebook and a paperback. I actually am in the process of recording an audiobook, so stay tuned for that. I'm very excited about spoken word and just being able to use the ebook with the audiobook together. So it'll actually highlight the words as you're hearing me speak those words, and I think that will just further enhance the experience, because you'll be able to see the art, the words, and then hear my voice.
I will be looking forward to that, because there's something about poets reading their own poems that is so pleasant, because it's as though they would relive these feelings. And so we really hope you release this amazing reading of your poetry collection, which we can even listen to on the go or when we are commuting, which would be fantastic. And I will also put the link of your book in the description box, so listeners and people who are tuned in can easily find it and can go directly into Amazon and the website you just mentioned. And as a last question, where can people follow you to get updates of your works?
Yeah, so my Instagram account is where I usually post just so many updates and different, new work. So that is nilam.poetry. There's also links on my website to my Instagram page. So findingherbeingher.com and nilam.poetry.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for everything. Make sure you follow Nilam in her poetry journey, and I would definitely recommend you to buy her poetry collection, Finding Her, Being Her, which is absolutely amazing. So thank you so much for being here and taking your time for this interview. It was such a pleasure.
Likewise, thank you for having me. I really, really enjoyed this discussion. It was amazing.
Thank you for listening to the Poetry Lighthouse. If you liked this episode, don't forget to share and subscribe to our podcast. You can also visit our website, thepoetrylighthouse.com, where you can read and submit your works of poetry and short stories. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram to keep updated. This is the end of the episode. Thanks again, and see you next time.